Morning, all. So we are within 4 days now of the draft, and draft trade talk is picking up. However, there haven't been the trades made as of yet. Mark Bergevin is listening to offers on the number 16 pick. Now, keep in mind it's a deep draft. At 16, you might be looking for a guy like Caden Gooley. You might be looking at Braden Schneider, depending on which one of them goes first. You might be looking at somebody who drops. Maybe it's Seth Jarvis drops. But at this point, for that number 16 pick, Bergevin's looking for a top six forward. There aren't very many teams that are in that position. He wants to punch up the attack of the Montreal Canadiens, which is a good idea. But again, at this stage, I don't see anybody necessarily offering that up. Now, once we get to the draft, once we see who's available at 16, it's possible that a team will make that phone call and say, actually, with this guy still available, we're okay. We will trade you a top six forward in exchange for that first round draft pick because we think the guy that we're going to draft here might have a chance to push for a job this coming season, or at the very least, justify the cost within a year or so. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Trades at the draft are going to happen. Right? We always hype this up, and then at the end, it often fizzles out. Sorry. Now, San Jose, there's still rumors and from other sources as well, stating that Dubnyk and Donato are headed to the Sharks from Minnesota. So that the Sharks are very interested in picking up Dubnyk, whose numbers last year were a nightmare, and Donato, who's now been through two organizations trying to find his way. And we'll see how that goes. Dubnyk's got one more year left on his contract, which is not a cheap contract. So I don't know if San Jose is going to want Minnesota to retain on that or what's going to happen. But Bill Guerin was very transparent after the play-in round against Vancouver that he felt that the Wild needed to improve their goaltending. So I would imagine that Dubnyk gets moved before the 9th. And that on the 9th or shortly thereafter, we see Minnesota pick up another goaltender on the free agent market. I would think that they would go pretty hard after numerous goaltenders that are potentially available. There's one just down the road in Vancouver, Markstrom, that if he goes to market next week, he's probably going to make a pretty good living based on that contract he'll get from wherever. And as much as I'd love to see Vancouver keep him, there's a limit on the amount of money in term that I think most fans anyways would be comfortable with. So we'll see. But yeah, so the goalie carousel is going to happen. It's on the way, and it could start with Dubnyk. Technically, I guess we could say that when Lundqvist gets bought out, that was the start of it, but we kind of knew that was coming. During the season when they were playing Georgiev, when Shesterkin got hurt, it was like, shouldn't they be playing Lundqvist here? I guess they don't have any faith in Lundqvist. All right, Oilers. Talking about the Oilers here. Ken Holland is optimistic about Puljujarvi coming back. And the number that I've seen is that maybe Puljujarvi will sign a 1-year deal for $1.2 to $1.5 million. And just try to prove himself and earn a huge raise after that. And it's possible. I don't see any reason why it won't work. Puljujarvi had a rough go of it with Edmonton, but he has the talent. He's shown that since going home to Europe, and I think he could very well prove Ken Holland to be the smart one if he comes back over and fulfills his role. And I wouldn't rule out the idea of Puljujarvi signing to come back over, and then they buy out James Neal. The idea being if you bring in Puljujarvi, then James Neal, you can buy that out because then you don't necessarily need James Neal in the lineup at that stage, and it might be better for your team to just buy him out now and have that money to spend on perhaps a blue liner. This is why if Arizona was saying, okay, well, fine, we'll give you Oliver Ekman-Larsson, but we want your first-round draft pick and Evan Bouchard. That's why you hang up the phone. Because, even though Bouchard hasn't made it to the NHL yet, that's risky. And the Oilers wouldn't want to give up a first either. So, although Ekman-Larsson apparently just wants to go to either Vancouver or Boston, and that could change. Absolutely could change. I still think it's funny, but it could change. we'll see whether or not Puljujarvi coming over changes things, and whether or not maybe they circle back on Ekman Larson, or Arizona circles back to Edmonton after they see what other teams are offering. And again, they'd have to convince OEL because he's got that no movement clause. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is discussing an extension with the Oilers to the extent that his agent says, yeah, he wants to stay. And I don't see any reason why the Oilers wouldn't want Ryan Nugent-Hopkins to stick around. Great team guy, whether he's first line, second line, or third line. He's never complained about lack of ice time. He's never complained about the team when they weren't winning. Nugent-Hopkins, good team guy, and really he can play center. He can play the wing if he needs to. Very useful forward all around. So I would expect that extension to happen. I don't know that he necessarily gets a raise, but I would think he could probably stay at the same cap hit for 2, 3, 4 year deal, depending again on what Ken Holland wants to do, and what Nugent Hopkins thinks he's worth as well. So nice to see that players wanting to stay in Edmonton and players wanting to come back to Edmonton. This is a far cry from the Oilers of old, and this is why I think that the days of the Oilers being just an also ran near the bottom or at the bottom of the league, I think those are done, because part of the problem was that players didn't want to stick around, and the organization wasn't being run very well, to the point where other players may not have wanted to go to Edmonton, players wanted to leave Edmonton. So if you've got an environment where players want to be there, that's a good thing. Tampa Bay apparently is getting asked some questions by the NHL, who are unhappy with the parade/celebration that the team had with fans. And I didn't report on it at the time because I thought it was a bad idea too. And apparently the NHL agrees. And you see some of this footage is coming out of them partying with fans, and it's just it's insane. It's we have this bubble environment and everybody's going to be safe, and then we're going to party as if it's just the same as any other year. And so I don't know what the NHL can do about it. I know in the NFL they're ramping up fines on players and staff and whatnot, because they had an outbreak this week in the NFL, and they've had some skirting of the regulations by a couple of teams. So they understand that the season hangs in the balance, and that if everybody gets sick, then the season's out the window. And so the NHL's got to be looking at this and thinking, okay, so this is such a bad idea, and I'll be curious to see what they do. And again, what's going on with the NFL, what's happened with Major League Baseball, how they've been able to have seasons. Look for the NHL to do something similar as what the NFL and Major League Baseball have been doing. So we'll see how that goes, right? Because 2020, so who knows? But at least 2020 has less than 3 months left in it. Oh, I'm so thankful. Boston, apparently they're listening to offers on Brandon Carlo and Jake DeBrusk. Jake DeBrusk's an RFA. Odds are they've probably talked to him about numbers. They probably don't see eye to eye on this. It's possible with Carlo that it's much the same situation. And for the Bruins, they may be trying to hold on to Torrey Krug and may be willing to part with others. And or they're just trying to save some cap for the future. And, maybe they just feel like they can get some upgrades somewhere. And listening to trade offers doesn't necessarily mean a trade's going to get made. But every now and then, we see surprise trades out of nowhere. So we'll see if the Bruins have something on tap. I do trust Don Sweeney. So if Sweeney's got DeBrusk on the market, and if Krug's going to leave, and I'm not going to be doom and gloom about it. Don Sweeney's proven to me before that he can be trusted to run the team. He does a pretty good job. Tyler Sagan. So I've talked about this a lot during the playoff run. And I truly believe this, that Tyler Sagan dealing with injuries. And towards the end of the Stanley Cup Finals, his play was getting better. I know he still wasn't getting goals, but his play was getting better. Reportedly, they're going to reveal next week how many injuries the Stars were dealing with. And for Sagan, this isn't necessarily all at the same time, but he's been dealing with wrist, hip, groin, and knee issues. So this run through the playoffs, if his wrist was a problem, that would make sense about why he wasn't getting goals then. Knee problems, that would explain why he wasn't that fast on the puck at certain parts of the playoffs, why he was struggling, why his ice time was getting cut, why he was missing time, too. So, for Sagan, hopefully he heals up and he's 100%. Because, again, I know he was struggling, and I know a lot of people were, taking shots at him and all this during the playoffs, especially towards the end, but I thought the effort was there. There just wasn't any finish, and so if he was dealing with a myriad of injuries, that would make a lot of sense. And there are a lot of Dallas Stars who were dealing with injuries. I'm not saying that the Tampa Bay Lightning were not, because they were, and we know that Steven Stamkos, after having hernia surgery, he had some kind of an injury related to it on his way back, and so he's supposed to be 100% to start next season. But Stamkos, of course, only played a couple of minutes during that Stanley Cup championship run for Tampa Bay, and they win the cup, and he's their emotional leader of it. So we'll see how things go next season, and I'm looking forward to a day when I'm going to be talking about all the injuries and the day-to-day stuff and the previews and all that again. So here's to hoping that happens sooner rather than later. The NHL and the NHLPA should be meeting next week to have preliminary discussions on how the 2020-2021 season might look. And we'll keep our fingers crossed for that. And I'll be here to report on it when that happens. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.